Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Ultimate Doctor Who Marathon. This is the show where I take a look at every classic Doctor Who story plus a bunch of Big Finish audio dramas, one episode a day, 7 days a week. And today, on the 24th of November, 2019, I'm starting to look at the final story in the second Season 19 trilogy of big audios from Big Finish Productions, Serpent in the Silver Mask, written by David Llewellyn, starting with Part 1. So, Serpent in the Silver Mask, Part 1 is basically all set up, and I mean that in a good way. It is definitely setting up just a lot of what the story itself is going to be accomplishing and doing through through the next 4 episodes. What's interesting is that this is a story where you actually have quite a small cast overall. This is a story where the, the Doctor and company arrive on this planet that is basically held an hour behind the rest of the universe through a, one of those things where you, it's basically this idea that it's sort of like as a leisure spot, for the story. It's not one of those standard, oh, here's a standard setting, but it's one where it's like, right here we're doing something a little bit different, a little bit more interesting, and just a little different overall to give you a sense of what's going of what is really just going on. It is it's one where we start the story out at this, basically with all the characters in the middle of being, of being, being sort of this interesting little setting written by David Llewellyn, which does, which does start the story incredibly. It's incredibly an interesting way of doing it, mainly because, it's a story that that is built around doing an homage to a classic film. This time it's the comedy Kind Hearts and Coronets, which is a film about a commoner being murdering. It's turning out he's actually in line for royalty, or like a lordship, and then comedically killing, trying to kill his way up to the top. Which is honestly, it's an interesting idea to do a story like this, and it's an interesting idea, to have a story where you really do get, you get the sense, you get the full sense of what the, of what, of what the story, of what the story does. You know, it's one of those things where you you know, it's a little thing where you get the story built around this family of clones, all played by Samuel West. And basically, something starts killing a bunch of them. And you think, and this entire first episode kind of goes through the idea that, where it's like, you really don't quite know, what the, what the story is necessarily doing, because this is one of those stories where it is doing an homage, and you kind of need to have an idea of what's actually being homaged here. Like, there is definitely a sense that you kind of should know, that you should really know what that you should know what the what the story is doing, and really just where the story is going from here. It's one of those weird little bits of the story where you have to ask yourself the question of what's going on, and what David Llewellyn is doing. And there's this nice relationship with one of the members of the family. Now, the entire family are just space mobsters. So you kind of have Kind Hearts and Coronets mixed in with inspiration from The Godfather. And you have, the Mazzini family, again played by Samuel West, who are excellent. They do get a great, they get a great, just sort of point of being in the story, because of just sort of what they do as mobsters. And you have this really solid sense that that you understand what the story is doing, and just what the characters are kind of going through, before you even just go to the where you go to the conclusion, where you have this serpent-like creature attacking things, and it is a really interesting, sort of story because of that, and it really, we start off to just a really solid start. So overall, I'm going to give Serpent in the Silver Mask a perfect 10 out of 10. It's the 25th of November 2019, and I just finished listening to part 2 of Serpent in the Silver Mask. Now, part 2 of this story is incredibly short. It only runs to about 18 minutes, which is one of the shortest episodes of Doctor Who we've ever had. It's shorter than, I think it might be shorter than part 5 of The Mind Robber, which is like 17 minutes, which is also around 18 minutes. It might be just a little shorter. So this might be like the shortest episode of Doctor Who that we've had. And I'm going to be honest, it's a very weird length, and you can really tell that this is short and that things are kind of missing, mainly because this is one where it's just like, oh, we're by the time you get to the cliffhanger, oh, the episode's over. We really didn't feel like we got all that much accomplished overall. Just some more looking into the mystery. It's a really weird sort of, hey, here's this, here's the story kind of being finished, kind of, but also kind of just not finishing. It's one of those things where it's like, we're just sort of building the deep mystery. Like this particular, this particular story is one where you kind of just get the you get this weird ending where there is where there is where there's just this weird sort of ending where you get you get the Doctor trying to be the one to investigate, but that's not really what the story kind of needs or really even does. Like it's don't get me wrong, I really did enjoy the episode. There's a lot of fun stuff here and just a lot of really where you get a lot of stuff here that you really get the idea of what the story is. It's one of those things where you just you have where you have you have the story being very much just this weird thing. Like, you have the next victim being Maria Mazzini, who, because a lot of this episode is genuinely good investigation of the idea that, like, hey, here's all this, here's all this, this stuff, with, with these characters, doing stuff, and you have, like, investigating to figure out who could possibly do it, because they figure out that this venom connects to this member of the Mazzini family. Now, mind you, she's also played by Samuel West, which is genuinely the highlight. What leads up to her death scene is great. She's basically trying to get into the Doctor's pants, which is, hilarious and makes for a lot of really, really solid comedy. Because this is kind of a comedy murder mystery, but then she gets murdered, so it's like, well, shoot, now we're kind of back to the drawing board, and we're building up to the cliffhanger that the superintendent in charge thinks the Doctor is the one responsible for doing it, which, you can see that coming from, like, the beginning of the episode when Adric almost lampshades the twist of this episode, which is just kind of an interesting, weird thing to lampshade, that, yeah, you're going to lampshade the big cliffhanger, instead of actually doing something new and interesting. It's here's a quick little this little this weird little sort of ending bit that gets the characters together and bring things together. It's one of those things where you don't necessarily get the chance to enjoy a lot of the story, but you get at least some of it, and it's good enough that you have a again, I think this might just be the problem of David Llewellyn ending on a cliffhanger that he doesn't need to end on. Like, it's like, okay, here's the cliffhanger you went with, but that didn't really give us any big conclusion. It's just here's a stopping point. But still, it's a pretty good episode if it is a bit short. So overall, I'm going to give Serpent and the Silver Mask Part 2 a 9 out of 10. Alright, it's the 2nd of December 2019. Yeah, we missed a ton of days, and for that, I apologize. I was out of town essentially all last week. And basically, this was the first time I actually had any time to really, really to do any listening or recording. So, yeah. But Serpent and the Silver Mask Part 3 is great. Okay, I will say it does, it almost feels like we're wrapping things up, but oh no, we still have a fourth, but we still have we still have a fourth episode in this story, so, that's one part where I'm just like, that's a little concerning, because, yeah, doing a story, about, doing a story like this is, a great idea. I do enjoy, I have enjoyed the murder mystery as everyone slowly gets picked off one by one. And, you have the characters really, really doing a funny sort of, a funny thing with this overall story and with the overall plot being what it is, and being about, the characters doing things, and, having a lot of the story built up around the character, built up around the characters as, Adric tries to find everything. Everyone seems to come to the same conclusion, which I think is a really solid sort of thing for the story to do. That, like, yeah, we are showing everyone work together and end up coming to the same conclusion independently on who the murderer is, and, why this entire story is, built around, what the whole murdering stuff is. It's one of those things where you really do get the you get the story to be to be this, to be this entire thing about, characters having fun and doing a bunch of things, but you really get the sense that David Llewellyn knows what he's doing. Peter Davison is great. He has a lot of fun. Janet Fielding is also excellent, and Matthew Watt. Basically, all four of the regulars are great throughout this story. They are clearly showing just how much they can do, as characters, and how much they can, bring everything together into a, into a story. It's one of those things where you get that real sense of what the story is going for. It's not necessarily one of the it has one of those things where the story has to be good. It's a great little bit of a bit of a plot that kind of that works well for what it is, and does genuinely just a good job of having our characters come together to this just this complete just the way the story ends up. They're you get a lot of what the story is doing, and where it's going, but I have to say there's just a slight issue mainly with the story being kind of a, hey, we're doing this, we're doing this thing where the story kind of wraps up at the end of episode 3, which is kind of worrying for the final part, just ever so slightly, because, that's not really what the story should be doing at this point. It should be trying to, find itself a solid conclusion, and to find itself a way to bring us to the finish and end the story very well. That being said, I will still say Serpent and the Silver Mask Part 3 is excellent. It is, it's a great example of a story. So overall, I'm going to give Serpent and the Silver Mask Part 3 a 9 out of 10. Alright, it's the 3rd of December 2019, and I just finished listening to Part 4 of Serpent and the Silver Mask, the concluding episode to the story. The concluding episode to the story, and a genuinely great episode, which I think does a great job of ending the story and actually wrapping things up pretty decently without actually failing to without failing to kind of without failing a story, without sort of failing to like run out of steam, and actually give the final episode of this story just a solid through line and a big build towards the ending of toward the ending of the story, and just in general, one of those stories where you get where you really get a sense of what the of what the story does. It's one of those it's one of those stories where you get you get just this sense of who the villain is, like, and the actual villain is only is only one of those it's one of those things where you where you get you get the sense that just the story that this is a story where you kind of have the plot built around the idea that actually the first murder victim is the one killing everyone else, and then a lot of it is like, oh, surprise, there is a there is a sense about just about the just about the entire just of the entire it's one of those things where the story just kind of it's one of those things where you get you get the story it's one of those things where you get the ending of the ending of the story being done to sort of being like, all right, here's a big paradox, and here's just a bunch of stuff that the story does and can do to be really interesting and play around with tropes and things that Doctor Who does best, and really just show what what could be great. It is a little predictable that it's going to be a paradox, though the humor in this episode is amazing. And it goes to show just, you know, how far down the rabbit hole the story goes to whoever actually gets the Mazzini fortune. And Tegan actually gets some really nice moments at the end where she's, you know, says goodbye and decides to stay with the TARDIS. That's quite nice. So overall, this is honestly, it is a great, honestly, it is a great little, little story, you know, one of those things where there's just, you know, there's just this, this idea about, you know, just of what the story, just what the story does. So, you know, overall, it's a great ending, but you know, it could have been maybe tightened up a little bit better. So overall, I'm going to give Serpent and the Silver Mask for a 9 out of 10. That being said, we add up the scores and average them out to give Serpent in the Silver Mask a final score of 9.25 out of 10. Thank you, everybody, for watching this installment of the Ultimate Doctor Who Marathon. As always, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. And join me next time when we get back to televised Doctor Who for the first of, like, 3 Peter Davison televised two-parters, and the first pure historical story from television since the Highlanders in Black Orchid.